Where will John Collins be at the end of this year's NBA offseason? That is one of the bigger questions, and he is one of the bigger names in NBA 2021 free agency. And so, some of the possible destinations, some of the potential sign and trades we could see this summer is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. John Collins has been an interesting player throughout his NBA career. He came in as a bit of a tweener between the power forward and the center position. I think he's definitely defined himself more as a power forward at this point in time. But he had a very good playoffs. So I think he definitely upped his value from what it was during the regular season after he had a bit of a lower productivity season statistically than he did the year before. But there was more talent on Atlanta, and so some of those numbers had to be expected to drop. But his efficiency in the playoffs was very good. His defense and his rim protection showed to be fairly valuable as well. Although his numbers were not there, he only averaged 14 points per game. This is on a very deep Atlanta team with a lot of talent, and he's shown the potential and the ability in the past to be someone who can score 20 plus a night in the right role while being fairly efficient. He can space the floor for you. He's definitely going to be valuable on the right team in the right scenario. It's just going to be about the dollar sign. And Atlanta just might not have that money, and that's the only reason he might be leaving Atlanta, and it's definitely not due to the fact that Atlanta don't want him. I think he's still a good fit in Atlanta. I know there's been some disgruntlement between him and Trae Young, but I think a lot of that has been solved now between a good playoff run. I'm sure Collins would like a bigger role than he currently has in Atlanta, but Atlanta are also a very good team right now, and so you can't really argue the fact that winning and wanting to win is going to play a component in that. But it really just depends on how much teams are willing to give him. He's not going to have too much of a say, if any say, in where he goes this summer as a restricted free agent. That's just kind of the way it goes. And so it's ultimately just going to be who is willing to pay him the most money, which is the way it always goes as a restricted free agent. Wherever pays you the most is where you end up. And that might not be at Atlanta simply due to the number of players they have to pay and players they are already paying moving into next year. And so some of the teams that John Collins could potentially end up on are Miami. They have 9 or 10 players as free agents this year and are going to have a nice bit of cap space. Are going to look for a third guy alongside Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and a power forward is even last year, in my opinion, the weakest position within the starting lineup. The Dallas Mavericks. They're looking for a new number 2 to pair alongside Luka Doncic, as Kristaps Porzingis is likely to leave this summer. I don't think Porzingis would be in any way, shape, or form included in a sign and trade for Atlanta, or just if they sign him outright, of course he wouldn't be involved. But Dallas are definitely a team that could be interested in him. The Timberwolves are a team that has been rumored to be interested in John Collins for a while now and continue to be so. I think his fit alongside Karl-Anthony Towns would be quite interesting and fun. That would be one of the most fun offensive backcourts, or front courts, in the league. They'd offer very good spacing. John Collins would offer a little bit of rim protection on the defensive end as well, as Karl-Anthony Towns is not a great defender. So I think it's a good fit to keep some good interior defense on that team as well. The San Antonio Spurs are also a team that could be interested in John Collins, whether they keep DeMar DeRozan or not this summer. He fits the timeline of the team fairly well either way at age 24. By the time the next season starts, he fits in with that timeline very well and a good young team, and can be someone that fixes their weakest spot in their starting lineup, which is the power forward position, and can continue to grow with this young group that they currently have building. The Washington Wizards could look to replace Davis Bertans with John Collins and add him alongside Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal in hopes of retaining them, or they could try and add John Collins simply as a piece to fit their younger timeline as they are moving forward, as they potentially move on for Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook this season. The Sacramento Kings could be a team that look to send Marvin Bagley to Atlanta, and maybe Atlanta look to bring him in and try and see if they can do anything with Marvin Bagley while he's still on his rookie deal. But the playing time is going to be limited for Marvin Bagley, of course, in Atlanta. But I think it's more so just likely for Sacramento to look to improve their move away from Buddy Hield and have a 3 of Halliburton, Fox, and John Collins moving forward as their core 3 pieces. And the Boston Celtics and Golden State Warriors are also 2 interesting teams to consider who will be looking to add a 3rd piece this season. The Warriors, of course, looking to use Wiseman and their 2 first-round picks to try and add a 3rd piece alongside Clay and Curry. And you could say a 4th around Draymond, although I'm sure they're looking to add a 4th piece that is better than Draymond. And then Boston, of course, who have traded away Kemba Walker and are financially in a tough spot to add a 3rd piece, but if they are able to do so via sign and trade, will certainly be interested in doing so. And so with that being said, the report officially for John Collins is that the Mavericks, Heat, Spurs, and Timberwolves have shown interest in John Collins. And I think that definitely makes sense. The Mavs obviously are going to need a number two. The Heat have a lot of cap space to deal with this summer, have a lot of players that are potentially going to be leaving, or that they have to decide on whether they want to bring back. They have RFAs of their own in Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson, and John Collins fixes their weakest position in the starting lineup, and someone that they currently don't have anyone under contract for next season, with Ariza and Bjelica both being free agents. As far as the Spurs again make sense. Timberwolves make sense. This fits timeline. Good pieces to add to their team. John Collins is probably going to cost 25 to 30 million, and that's where the issue comes in for a lot of teams. That's where someone like Atlanta is just going to be able to struggle to retain him, just from a fact of John Collins is good, but maybe he's not quite worth that much money. And for a team like Atlanta that has a lot of talent, maybe you see them move to more of a spot like DeAndre Hunter slides down to the 4, Cam Reddish plays the 3, something along those lines that just makes more sense moving forward long term from a contractual standpoint. Some potential mock trades for John Collins this summer. Again, these are just concept ideas. If the salaries don't work, you could argue value either way, but these are just some mock ideas that you could think of. This would be one for the Minnesota Timberwolves, where Jarrett Culver, Naz Reid, and a first-round pick would go to Atlanta for John Collins. Now, this one you can make sense of. There isn't a ton of salaries going back to Atlanta, which is probably going to be the way it's going to work in any sign and trade, because Atlanta are trading away John Collins because they don't want to pay him. So anything that Atlanta gets back is going to have to be future assets or players of low salary. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense, and it completely disregards what Atlanta are trying to do here with a John Collins trade. Jarrett Culver would be some good wing depth for them, / guard depth at the 2 or the 3. Again, Culver hasn't been great early on in his career, but I think he still has some potential. I think the relationship with him there in Minnesota and the fit just hasn't been that great. They haven't really given him much of a chance. Pretty much 20 to 30 games in, they just said, this guy isn't good, we're done, we don't really care about him. And I think that's just a poor mentality to have with any young player. Some guys just take longer to develop. Some will take a year or two. Some take a while. You look at Cameron Payne now, who's had a very good playoff run with Phoenix, although has dropped off a little bit more back into the playoffs, but still has been very good, had a very good season. And he's someone who was looked at to be one of the worst players in the league at some point. When Chicago brought him in, they just thought he was not anywhere near an NBA caliber player. And now he is a solid bench piece for Phoenix and is probably going to get a nice payday upcoming this summer. And so I think Jarrett Culver, taking a chance on him, he can be in behind some guys in Atlanta, I think would just make sense. You'd have Kevin Huerter there still. You still have Hunter, Reddish. You have lots of good guys in and around the 2-3 spot, and he can be some depth and someone you can try and develop in a more positive environment, positive culture, where you can try and get some more production out of him. Naz Reid's a fine backup center, of course, not amazing defensively, but can give some good offense for you, and a first-round pick from Minnesota could be a not terribly bad first-round pick, although that's lottery or just outside the lottery. For Golden State, you could definitely see a Wiseman and 7th overall pick package for John Collins. It makes it interesting because then if you do acquire John Collins is probably the 5 in Golden State, which we haven't seen too much of. But I think you could make it work. I think your interior defense and your size, your rebounding might suffer a little bit, but John Collins is still a decent interior defender. He's still a decent rebounder. And I think he could definitely make it work for a team that would then have a lot of spacing, with Draymond probably being the only guy in the starting lineup not being a three-point shooter, but everyone else would be out shooting. Draymond would be your playmaker, your point forward. I think that would be a very interesting, fun fit to see. And a potential Boston trade would be someone like Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, and a first for John Collins and Kendrick Nunn. Smart replaces Nunn. You get an upgrade in your guard position. You pick up a bit more salary, but not anything near the John Collins type money. You had Grant Williams for a bit of depth at the 4, which is going to be needed, especially if you end up moving on from Gallo at some point in time, which will before his contract ends, or if not, in 2 years' time, he will be gone anyways. And then also a first-round pick from Boston. Just can't go wrong with a first-round pick. It could be if a 21 first-round pick from Boston probably offers more value than any other future year. But again, that's just dependent on how you value things going either way. But there's a lot of options for John Collins this summer, whether it is via sign and trade or restricted free agency. There's going to be a lot of teams interested, a lot of teams inquiring, and a lot of teams putting in offer sheets. And you know Atlanta would love to keep him, but given there is this much interest, it's unlikely that Atlanta are going to be willing to match some of the high offers that come in for him. So a sign and trade is probably the most likely outcome for John Collins this summer. This Atlanta team's still going to be good, but they're definitely going to miss him. But it's going to be interesting to see John Collins' development moving forward outside of Atlanta. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below on John Collins and where you think he could end up this summer. Personally, I think one of the more likely fits is potentially Minnesota or Miami. I think those could be two of the more active players. Dallas will definitely be making a push as well. I don't think San Antonio will be as aggressive as those three teams, but I think those three will definitely make a play. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.